Sewalong for Fabrications. I'm Michelle, and I will be finishing up the Sewalong this week. So we have so far been putting our Oxbow tote together, and we are to the point where we have our exterior all put together. We have our lining kind of put together where we've got pockets on. So now tonight what we are going to do, and we sewed our zipper on. We basted it onto the exterior of the bag. So tonight what we're going to do is we're going to sew the lining in, and we are going to do the crossbody strap. And then we're going to be done. So super exciting. If you have any questions or comments while we are sewing along tonight, don't hesitate to just type something and I will hopefully catch that. And if you are watching this video after the live, we do monitor all of the comments. So please don't hesitate to write us a little message and we will get back to you within about 24 hours or so. So let's get started. So yeah, I've got my exterior. I'm going to have it. Ooh, I just had to move my sewing machine. So we have our exterior, and now what we're going to do is we are going to make a sandwich with our lining and our exterior pieces. And we're gonna sew one side of the lining on at a time. So we are not attaching the bottom part of the lining yet. We are keeping them in two separate pieces. And then after we have attached it to the top of the bag, we will add all that other stuff. I will attach it. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to take my bag. So you see I have the two pieces here. And I'm just going to fold it so that the zipper is exposed along one side. I've got this basted in place, and now I'm going to sew it together with the lining, and I'm basically sandwiching the zipper in between the exterior and the lining. So and what they suggest is the pocket piece that has, the lining piece that has the pocket goes on the side that doesn't have the pocket on the exterior. So I'm going to do that, and I'm actually going to I made a little interior zipper pocket on the other side of the lining for this bag. I did do a little standalone video on how to do this. So if you are interested in doing that, you can find it on our YouTube page here, and you can add an interior zipper pocket. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to use Wonder Clips, and I'm clipping my lining to my exterior along where the zipper has been basted. I'm using Wonder Clips because I find they work really well when I am needing to put together bulky stuff. And I like to sew with the exterior on top and the lining under. I find it just is easier for me to keep everything in where it needs to be, and that way the lining doesn't shift. Now it is interfaced, so it's not as much of a chance that it's going to shift underneath, or it's going to, you know, sometimes where it doesn't move evenly through the feed dogs. I don't want that to happen. So usually I put the lining on the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it on my machine. Now, I have the tail of the zipper going through the machine first. And so when you first basted the zipper, you basted it so it's not attached for the last 1.5 inches. But when you go to sew the lining on, you're actually going to sew right from the edge right across. And what you do need to do is you need to pull that zipper down and out of the way. You will eventually catch it once you hit that 1.5 inch spot. But for this part, you need to pull it out of the way. So I'm using my zipper foot, and I'm using a 1/4 inch seam allowance as per the instructions of the pattern. And I am just going to start sewing that down. Help me. Come on. Sometimes it doesn't like to feed through at the beginning. Come on. Okay, so I'm just putting it through my machine. And so this is final stitching. So I'm using about a 2.5 millimeter stitch length. And I'm following with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And I'm using my zipper foot. And right now the zipper is fully closed. And just keeping everything nicely in place. Sometimes you want to have lots of room on your table because the bag is quite large at this point. And you don't want it butting up against something behind your machine and preventing it from going through your machine. So when you're stitching this part, it's a good idea to have lots of room on your sewing table, if you can do so. Now I am getting close to my zipper pull, so I am just going to put my needle down, lift up my presser foot, and move that needle or that zipper pull past my needle so that it doesn't interfere. And I'm sewing all the way to the edge of the bag. So now I have sewn from here to here, pulling the zipper down and out of the way. And so you can see if I turn it like this, my sandwich has been my zipper has been sandwiched in between my lining and my exterior. Perfect. So I've got one side done. Now I'm going to fold it down like this so that I have the wrong side of the zipper showing here. And I'm going to pin or clip the other side in place. And then I'm going to sew that. And you just want to make sure that your sides are even, because you don't, when you go to sew your side seams, you don't want anything to be all askew. So I'm just clipping that into place. Now it is starting to get a little bulky in that you've got a lot of stuff going on with this bag. Just push the other lining side out of the, push it down so that you have enough room to clip it. And then I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And I'm going to sew that with my zipper foot. Sometimes it just doesn't want to go through there. Okay. So I never moved my pull back, so I'm going to just reach into the bag, find that zipper pull, and move it past my foot. There. Perfect. So I find that sometimes the lining can slip up out from underneath the exterior. If that happens, just reach underneath and give the lining a little tug and it should line up again. And sometimes I like to use my fingers to hold all the layers down. This is a good time to use a stiletto as well. I picked one up from the store today, so I'm going to give it a try. I have not used one of these before, but I think it's going to work nicely. Oh, it works so nice. It just helps me keep all the layers in place. And I can just hold them there and get really close to my foot and needle, closer than I can get with my hand. So, ooh, why didn't I buy one of these earlier? That's super handy. So when you get to this side, you are going to want to pull the zipper out of the way again. so that you're not sewing it past that 1.5 inch mark. Okay, so there, I've got my other lining piece sewn in place. So this is kind of what it's looking like now. I've got my exterior and I've got my lining sewn in. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to, sorry, you can't see. I'm going to I'm going to sew the exterior, the bottom of the lining in. So I'm going to take the side that has the pocket is the side that I do not want to leave the opening for turning. So in the lining of your bag, you do need to leave about this much, I'm going to say like 10 inches to open so that you can birth your bag, turn it inside, right side out. Because when you sew it together, it's the wrong side is on the inside. So, or sorry, the right side is on the inside. And so we want to leave an opening so that we can birth the bag. So I like to do that opening on the piece that does not have the pocket that extends all the way to the bottom of the lining. So it's easier to stitch it closed when you go to do so. So what I'm doing is I'm just pinning the, excuse me, the bottom of the lining to the piece that has the pocket. I like to do that one first. And then I will sew all the way across. Now you do need to start your stitching 1/2 inch in from the edge of this piece, and you end it 1/2 inch away from the end of this piece. So I like to mark that with some chalk or my favorite marking stuff. I'm just trying to find my handy little seam guide or measuring gauge. So I'm just going to mark 1/2 inch on both sides. There we go. Now you need to leave 1/2 inch because when you go to sew this side of the bottom lining piece, and we had to do the same on the exterior bottom piece, you need it to not be sewn because you have to clip into your seam there. So I'm going to take it to my machine. I'm going to make sure everything's lined up nicely. Oh, I'm going to take my zipper foot off and put my regular foot back on. Ooh, I don't want my thread caught in there. And I'm going to sew that. So I'm going to start 1/2 inch away from the edge, and I'm going to use 1/2 inch seam allowance. So it's always a good idea to backstitch here because you want it to be nice and secure. And I'm just going to stitch along that. And I can't really see my marking. It must have rubbed off. You can also use a pin to mark it, and you know, whatever works for you. Okay, so there, that one side is sewn, and now we are going to have our lining like this, and we are going to attach the other side. So you do need to have those centers marked on both the side lining piece and the bottom lining piece. I'm not sure if I marked the center on the lining on the side. So if I am not sure, I'm just going to mark it again. I just put a little snip in there. I find that's sufficient for me to be able to find it. I know I've already marked it on the bottom piece. And I'm going to put that center and clip it. And I'm just going to do the exact same as I did before and clip everything together. I'm going to mark the 1/2 inches again. Now, and the other thing I'm going to do is I need to leave a fairly big opening here for turning. So I'm just going to kind of eyeball it and mark where I need to do my stitching. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it to the machine. I don't know if you can see that, but I've got my 1/2 inch marking here. I have a marking here, a marking, sorry, it's really hard to hold it up. Marking over here, and then the 1/2 inch over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch from the first 1/2 inch to this mark, leave this middle part open, and then stitch from here to here. And that's going to leave the opening for turning. And I'm going to make sure I really tack my seams there, or bind off my seams, because, or my stitches, sorry, because I don't want this coming apart when I'm turning the bag, and there's a lot of bulk that has to go through this opening. Okay, here we go. I'm going to take off that last clip. Oh, I'm going to tidy my spot. I'm so bad for any time I like take clips and pins off, I just like throw them down and then they're always in the way later. Okay, so we now have our bag looking like this. So we have our lining sewn with the bottom and our exterior pieces, and now we're going to sew the side seams. So what you do is you are not sewing this part yet. You are just literally pinning the sides together like this from the top of the lining to the bottom of the exterior, all along there. And then we are going to sew from the, oh, sorry, my phone keeps tilting. You're going to sew from here to the bottom of the exterior. And what you want to do is you want to have the lining, or sorry, the zipper. I think you want the zipper towards the, oh, this tail you want to tuck in the bag, because you do not want to sew it by accident. And you want the zipper to go towards the lining. You know what? I might actually start with the exterior and go down to the lining. I think it tells you in the pattern. I don't think it really matters actually, but we're gonna try it like this. So I'm just gonna use my Wonder Clips. I wanna line up my ends here, and I wanna line up my seam right here so that everything matches up very nicely. And also right here is the strap holder with the webbing I did. So it's kind of a little bit more bulky there. It's not too bulky with the webbing I chose, but I did make another bag that I used a very thick canvas for, and I used the canvas for the strap holders, and it was quite a lot of bulk to sew through. So I did use my hump jumper, and I found that really helped. So I will show you what a hump jumper looks like. Find mine. So this is what a hump jumper looks like. So what you do, I can show you. Actually, I'll show you as we get to the strap connectors in the bag. I don't really need to use it, but I'm going to show you how to do it. Okay, so once I have this all clipped, I'm just going to clip one side at a time. You could clip both sides and then sew them one after another, but I'm going to just do it separately. So I now have my side clipped, just one side. This is going to either fold up inside or fold up like this. That's okay. It'll bounce back when you go to turn the bag. And I am going to sew with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Oh, still a reverse. So this is going to be where it can be quite bulky, so just take your time. Make sure you've got a nice, good, sharp needle in there. Okay, so I'm coming up to the bulky part, and I'm going to see if I can show you how to use this hump jumper. Okay, so the hump jumper has two thicknesses. It has a thinner side and a thicker side. Basically what you want to do is you want to bring your foot up. You're going to lift your foot up, and you're going to stick that hump jumper. So there's a groove in here under your foot, so that the needle is in the middle of that groove. Let me see if I can. It's my sewing machine is too bright, the light. You're not going to be able to see that really well. But basically what it's doing is, instead of when you come to a really bulky seam, what happens is your foot will go like this, and then it tries to go up and over like this. And that can cause not very nice stitching. And so what your hump jumper is doing is just making your foot stay even as it's going across. So it can be really handy to use. Basically, you just put it under your foot, and you put your foot down. My machine is reminding me to do so. And you just stitch along, and it just keeps your foot nice and even so that there's no problems. And you can do it at the beginning of the stitching and at the end of it as well, like right after the bulk. And I actually want to go back. I missed some stitching, and I want to fix that up. Okay. Hope if I go the right way. Okay. Now I'm coming up to where the zipper is. And I'm just going to reach in the bag and pull it out of the way. So this is the zipper tail, which is the excess zipper that is in there. And I'm just getting it out of the way. I just want to do that stitching over again. I kind of forced the bag through, and I don't like how it turned out. Okay, I want to make sure my lining is where I need it to be. Okay, and now I'm sewing on the lining part. So I'm just going to sew to the bottom. Okay. I forgot to move the phone away. Okay, so now I have it sewn all along the side of the bag. I'm still not doing anything with this little spot. That's going to be after we do the other side. So now I'm going to pin these together. And okay, I find my stuff is not really, or my sides don't slip too much, so I'm not going to be overzealous with the clipping. Okay, so I've got that ready to go, and here we go. So I was sewing another one of these Oxbow totes in a bigger size, and at this point I was like, holy moly, that's a lot of bag. It was so much bag. It was like covering me and the table while I was trying to get it to fit through my machine. It was a lot, but the bag is amazing. Okay, and sometimes when you've got a lot of bulk, it's really preventing me from having nice straight seams. So I'm just going to re-sew a couple here and hold this better into place. sometimes you really have to manhandle the bag when you are sewing it, when you're putting it through the machine. Because I find it can get... Oh, and I forgot that I want to have this zipper inside open about halfway. So I'm going to stick my hand in there and find the pull and open it so it's halfway. Does two things. It keeps the zipper head away from the edge of the bag while I'm trying to sew it. And it allows for easier turning when you go to birth your bag. I like to use the term birthing your bag. I find it's a lot like childbirth almost. So as you will see when we get to that point. Okay. So I've got my side seams all sewn. So the next step is we need to basically sew the bottom of the lining to the sides. And as you can tell, it's a rectangle at the bottom, and this is really not wanting to go around that. So we have to do some snipping. Just getting my scissors. So what we want to do, I'm going to show you on this one because it's easier. This is our stitching where we stopped a 1/2 inch away from the bottom of the bottom panel. And I'm going to stitch into this seam allowance from this part to just where my stitching starts. I do not want to clip into my stitching. I don't want to clip past my stitching in here, and I don't want to clip too far away from my stitching. I want it right where my stitching ends. And I'm going to not clip through my stitches, and you're only clipping through the side of the bag. You are not clipping through the bottom panel. So we are going to do this on the exterior pieces on both sides and on the lining pieces. So I'm just clipping those. I like to have really nice sharp scissors for this because it just does a better job. I absolutely love my LDH scissors, and so I like to use them for this. And I just have a couple more snips. Snip. Okay, so I will show you here. I have snipped from the edge to the line of stitching right where it ended, and I only snipped through the side pieces, not the bottom piece. Okay, so what's going to happen is it's going to allow us to sew the bottom to the sides. So we marked the center according to the pattern on this piece, the center from here to here. And so that is going to match up with your seam. And then the sides, or say the rest of it is going to go along like this. And then you're going to have this fan open like that. And it's basically that snip is easing open so that it can attach to the bottom easily, and you can stitch it down. It's kind of like when you clip curves, and it's going to allow the bag sides to go around the bottom, and it's going to create a nice square, or a nice box, square to the square shape to the bottom. So I'm just pinning all of these, or putting my Wonder Clips on. Now, when I go to sew this, I like to sew it from the top. And by the top, I mean I like to sew it like this in my machine, where I'm looking here and not at the bottom. And what I like to do is I like to clip or put them all in place and then go to my machine and sew them all at the same time. So I'm going to do my exterior pieces, and I'm also going to do my lining pieces. Oh, this is so awkward to like maneuver around. Okay. And I am pressing, or not pressing open, but the seam allowances need to be open when you go to do this. It's just going to help there be less bulk. So, oh, and I wanted that. And then once I have these all pinned into place, I'm going to go to my machine and sew them. And that's going to be the last little bit to sew of the main part of the bag. So I find the Oxbow is not a terribly long sew. I find you can usually put one of these together fairly quickly if you've done some bag making before. And I really like sewing this bag. This will be my fourth one, so I'm pretty happy with the pattern. Anna Graham, who does Noodlehead patterns, always makes excellent bag patterns, and they're always easy to follow. They're not terribly complicated, and they have nice bags at the end. So I'm now taking this to my machine, and I am going to sew that top from the top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch from this corner to this corner. And what I like to do, it's kind of hard to see with the dark, but I like to just start right here where the stitching from the side ended, and then I go across. And back stitching, oh, sorry, the bag is so big I hit the camera. The bag is a bit unwieldy, so do your best. It does not need to be perfect. I am always of the school that it is better done than perfect. And definitely backstitch so that you have a nice secure bit of stitching here. Come on. And I also like to stitch from the top so that I can make sure that that seam on the side is open when it's being stitched. Okay, I got one part of the lining done. Okay, so there's the lining sewn. And now I'm going to do the exterior, and then we can birth this bag and see what it looks like. Now, this one's going to be a little bit more difficult because usually it's going to be a little bulkier. Just take your time, go slowly. And depending on what you've interfaced it with, you might find that you have to kind of manhandle it through your machine a little bit. Okay, so that is stitched. Now, the other side. Ooh, come on. Ooh, my machine is yelling at me. Okay. So I'm not sure if you can see, but I have stitched from here to here. This line right here is the quilting, but this is what I've stitched to close that bottom up. So now it's completely enclosed, and now we need to birth this bag. So to birth this bag, it can be a little bit of an exercise. You reach through the opening that you have that you left in your lining, and you've opened up your zipper halfway. So you just open it up all the way now. And I like to grab the bottom and try to pull it through. Now, this is where it's a bit of a workout, especially because I have used such a bulky interfacing. I'm going to see if you can see what I'm doing here. And so I'm basically just pulling it through this opening. Sometimes I will shove it from this way. I will reach in, and just however you can get the bag out. This is why it's called birthing a bag, because you've got such a big thing coming out of such a small opening. And yeah, there you go. And so I'm just kind of easing it out. Okay, whoo, bit of a workout. So now I'm sticking my hand through the opening in the lining and pushing the bottom, or the exterior part out. Your Peltex should bounce right back. It's pretty durable. And what I'm doing is using my fingers and pushing that bottom so that everything is pushed out and there's a nice, neat rectangle at the bottom. It's like when you do a collar and you want your points to be nice and neat. So there's the bottom. Boop. And now I've got my lining like this. Now is a good time to sew up your bottom. I'm not going to do that basically right now because, you know, we're getting a little for time there. But basically what you're going to do is you're going to iron it so that you have a nice sharp seam allowance in there, and then you can either top stitch along that, or you can slip stitch it, or you can do a ladder stitch to close that up. I will do that later. But you're gonna, once you've done that, you're gonna push the lining into the bag. And then what I like to do is I like just to use my fingers, my hands, to kind of give a little finger press to the bag. And you may need to flip your zipper around so that, like that. So it looks like this. I like to give it a little close to see, look at that bag, it looks amazing. So there's another step here. We need to top stitch all around the outside of this bag. I like to start usually with this zipper area because usually you don't see it because the zipper's in the way. And it just kind of hides the stitching. So I'm just going to make sure that... Now, if you are not using an oilskin or a wax canvas, you can iron it at this point and iron this spot so that everything is nice and sharp. Because I'm using an oilskin, I can't iron it, so I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to make sure it's kind of finger pressed. And now I am going to take it to my machine and I'm going to top stitch it. This also can be a little unwieldy. Do your best. And basically I'm going to top stitch it with about 1/8 of an inch from the zipper tape. You know what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a clip. That's a really bulky spot and it's just not wanting to lay flat for me. So let me get it in my machine there. Okay, it's like a workout sewing this bag a little bit. Okay, I'm 1/8 of an inch away, and what I'm going to do is as I am sewing along this spot, I'm going to make sure that the lining is staying tucked under and it is not slipping out. I might increase my stitch length a little bit. Usually looks nice for top stitching. I'm just going to slowly go around the outside of the bag. I just use, there's a marking on my presser foot that I'm using to do 1/8 of an inch from where the zipper tape starts. I just do a little bit, move the bag around and make sure everything's laying nicely, and continue on. As you can see, it's a bit awkward, but it is so worth it because a bag that has top stitching just looks so much nicer and more professional. Now it is a bit bulky on the side seams, not too bad. Make sure everything's just nice. Okay, I'm almost done. Okay, take that off my machine, and there I have top stitched all around, so you can see there's a lining stitching right along the top of the bag. And I'm going to close it up. And look at that. Ooh, I like this bag a lot. And look at this, soft and stable. It stands up on its own, so that's really nice. I love that. Last thing to do is we need to sew the crossbody strap. This is super simple to do. The first thing you need is your slider. You need your webbing. And there is a top side and a bottom side to the slider. So the bottom side has the edges. So this is the bottom side. You can see the fold of the metal here. So I'm going to put it so that the webbing goes through the top side. It goes like that. And then you just fold it down like this so that the slider is going to look like that. And so your webbing is around that little bar in the middle, and I am going to stitch that down. So I like to use a straight stitch, and then I go back and cover up my raw edges with a zigzag. I find webbing can just fray a little bit. I like to do at least 1 or 2 passes of my straight stitch along here. I don't know if you can see that right there. And then what I would do is I go on the back and I would zigzag over top of that for 1 or 2 passes. I'm not going to do that right now because of time, but I highly suggest you do that. So now I have my crossbody strap and I need to put a swivel hook on. You do need to make sure you're putting it on correctly. So it needs to go on actually, like, I'll make sure I'm doing it correctly. Yes. So it's going to look like this. And then you are going to take the end and feed it through the slider. So I've got my slider here. I've got a swivel hook on the end. And then I'm going to take my other swivel hook and I'm going to do this. And I'm going to sew that down the exact same way I sewed my slider on. I'm going to do that. Okay, so now I have my crossbody strap done. I've got my slider in the middle that makes it adjustable. I got my 2 swivel hooks. And now you just attach it to your bag. So you find your D-rings and you attach it. I like to attach it so that the slider shows just the right side, but it will swivel around. And there, we have a finished Oxbow tote. Look at that, it's amazing. I think the 1.5 inch webbing worked just fine here with the 1.5 inch D-ring. I think it worked just perfectly. So yeah, there we go. We now have completed Oxbow totes. They are super fun. So if you have any questions or comments about this video, please don't hesitate to write us a little note. We will check them after the live as well. If you have any further questions, you can always email us. We have other sew-alongs on our YouTube page. We have a bunch for bag making, as well as some garments and some knit-alongs as well. So lots of fun stuff on our YouTube page. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this Oxbow tote. Sew along, and I can't wait to see you for the next one. Have a good night. Oh, I should actually